What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the 60 for 60 podcast. My name is Eric.
My name is Tom.
My name is Zach.
And my name is James.
And we are the Nomads, and we are here to talk to you about sports. All things sports. We're a podcast run by fans for other fans. And we've got a handful of topics here for you. I'm going to talk about the NFL. The obvious story there is the championship games are this weekend. There's some teams that are currently head coachless. And there are also teams that have been eliminated from the playoffs. Some of them we were questioning how they got there in the first place, and we're going to ask ourselves if they'll be back. But we're going to start this show off like we start every single show, and that's with Tom giving us his overreactions. Take it away, Tom.
Thank you very much. Well, unfortunately, there's not a lot of football left to be played this season, but we're going to treasure these last few weeks. With two overreactions here for the two championship games, one for each. The first overreaction is the Jaguars defense needs to score a touchdown in order for them to win on Sunday.
I don't think that's an overreaction at all. That's been pretty much how the Jaguars have dominated. You know, obviously they don't score a touchdown every single game, but I guess a team like New England, who I feel like the Jaguars do match up well against, the defense is going to have to score. You can't expect Blake Bortles to dominate. You can't expect to put the ball in Blake Bortles' hands and win. So the defense is going to have to do their job. They're going to need another scoop and score. They're going to need a pick six. They're going to need to capitalize on every mistake Brady makes in order for the Jaguars to pull this one off.
I think it's an overreaction. I don't think the Jaguars have to score a defensive touchdown. I think as long as their defense bends but doesn't break to Brady. I mean, Brady's going to get his yards. He's going to get a few touchdowns. But I think if the Jaguars just suffocate him and make him uncomfortable all day to the point where he doesn't feel like he's able to mount a comeback in the end, I think they'll have a good chance of winning on Sunday.
It's no reaction. They do need a touchdown on defense to win. They're not going to get on offense. Who's that quarterback? Bortles? Okay.
I'm going to actually call this an overreaction, and it's only because I strongly believe the Jaguars defense just needs to set up the Jaguars offense with Leonard Fournette. If Leonard Fournette gets the ball in the opponent's side of the field, he can whittle you down, take some time off the clock, and eventually score, because it's just so hard to stop a guy like him, especially when your defense is like the Patriots, where it's actually not that good, especially against the run. So I think Leonard Fournette, you get him set up inside the opponent's 30, I think that's a touchdown coming for the Jaguars. And if the defense can keep setting up plays like that, I don't think they necessarily need to get a touchdown, although obviously it would help to take some confidence away from Brady. Okay, so for the other game, overreaction number 2 is the total points for the Vikings and Eagles game will not exceed 30. It'll be a low-scoring ball game.
You know what? I'm actually going to say that is an overreaction. Just because while both defenses are absolutely dominant, I see this game going along the edges of 20-17, and that's still over 30. I don't think either one of these teams will score 30 points, but 20-17 was going to be my guess. So that puts it over 30. So yeah, I believe that is an overreaction. That is an overreaction.
I don't think it's an overreaction. At the end of the day, you have two top 5 defenses in the NFL against 2 backup quarterbacks. Nick Foles with his success a few years ago, Case Keenum with his recent success and success in college. I mean, they're still just bona fide backups, and with that, they got to play some shutdown defenses, and shutdown defenses expose weaker quarterbacks. I think it's going to be a barn burner. It's probably going to be something like 15-10 or something silly small, like how the Seahawks and the 49ers used to play in the playoffs a few years ago.
I don't think it's an overreaction either. The AFC championships are usually very low scoring, very close, compared to AFC where they're usually high scoring, lack of defense. So this one's going to be real close, maybe 7-10, 13-10, something like that.
I'm actually going to say this is not an overreaction. I'm going to actually make a prediction right here. I think it's going to be Vikings 17, Eagles 13, so exactly at 30. It'll be a low-scoring game. There'll be a lot of holding to field goals. Both defenses bend, don't break. I do think the Vikings will break through a couple times because they just find a way to make that one big play to get a touchdown. I think Case will get them in the end zone at least twice, but I think both defenses will hold to a lot of field goals. So it should be a good game, though. But that's all I got for the overreactions. Thank you guys for participating once again.
Always nice to hear overreactions. I think I'm going to miss them, Tom. You're going to have to come up with overreactions for other sports once football ends.
Basketball season is heating up. So.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. We'll return to the NBA and college basketball later on in the podcast, but right now, so with the championship games coming up this weekend, that means that many teams have sadly joined us playoff losers and missers on the couch. So, out of all those teams that were eliminated in the past 2 weeks, I know last podcast we were scratching our heads at how a couple of them made it in the first place. So, out of all the teams that were currently eliminated, which one or two do you think have the biggest chance of returning to the playoffs next year? And what teams or two do you feel like will not be returning to the big dance next year?
I can start. I'm going to do one team for each. So my team that I think is going to get right back into the playoff race next season, I think, is the Chiefs. I think they have a lot of speed. I think they just got going too fast and they ran out of steam, and they went on that losing streak, and then they obviously blew the lead at home again, which they seem to be doing a lot of in the playoffs recently. But I say if they're probably going to ditch Alex Smith for Patrick Mahomes to come in. I think that this team led by Patrick Mahomes with all that speed, and then you add the speed and the cannon for an arm at quarterback, and that defense is still pretty disgusting if they get healthy. I honestly think the Chiefs will be right back into it, and it might even be better than they were this year with a fresh young quarterback coming in. The team that made it this year that I don't think will be back, I do think it's going to be the Titans. As young as they are, I think I'm not going to say the word fluke because I hate that word, and it's kind of insulting to teams and fan bases. But I don't think I think the Titans got a little lucky this year. You know, they're a bit of an anomaly with their stats just not pointing to saying that this is definitely a playoff team. They had a relatively easy schedule. They had some last-minute wins, last-second wins, and Mariota is just a really good player. If they have a really good offseason, get a good head coach, get some good draft picks, bring in some free agents, maybe give Mariota some freaking targets on the outside. It's just ridiculous watching this guy trying to carry his team. Get him some help, continue with that two-headed monster running back, and maybe they can get back into it. But as of right now, out of the teams that were eliminated, I don't see the Titans making the playoffs next year.
Team most likely to make it back. I'd probably have to go with the Saints. Saints are really strong on offense, as they usually are with Breeze at the helm. And then defense, man, they hit it out of the park with Marshawn Lattimore. The dude's a shutdown corner in this league. He's a beast. They're definitely going to be back, probably win that division next year. And then the team I don't think will make it back happens to be in the same division. I have to go with the Falcons. I just don't understand what the issue is there, man. They had one run last year, and then this year they just kind of petered out. And then I think the trend's going to continue downward next year, and they're probably going to have a 7-9 season and have to reevaluate in the offseason what they want to do because they just have no direction. They have no identity. They can't get Julio Jones the ball in the red zone, which is astounding, considering he's probably the second biggest mismatch in the league behind Gronk. I just don't understand it. But those are my two teams I got.
My team that I think is going to make it back has to be the Los Angeles Rams. McVay's first year, he did all right. He got them to playoffs. They have young talent and Gurley and Goff. So, yeah, they just need to get some lockdown corners this year. maybe give him another receiver, or a second running back, and they'll be doing well. Then the fluke, as Tom didn't want to say, is Tennessee. They got lucky. They got lucky, the Texans, to have Watson all year. They won't even been in the playoffs. They won't even been close to the playoffs with Watson. They would have took up all the wins. So, yeah, Texans and Jacksonville are probably going back in that division next year, but Tennessee is going to fluke out.
Yeah, for me, the team that I think has the best chance of returning next season, I agree with Zach with the Saints, but another team, and I know Zach doesn't want to hear this one, but I do believe the Steelers will find a way to get back in there, whether it be the wild card or whatnot. If Big Ben does come back next year, which he said he is, if Bell comes back, Bell is kind of the contingency factor there. If Bell comes back, the Steelers will be back. If he doesn't, then my pick would probably be the Saints. Just because, like you said, offensively they've always been there, but they've never had the running game they have, and they've never had the defense that they have, and both of them are predicated on young, rookie, and second-year talent. That's going to be there for another 2 or 3 years, and it's only going to get better. So the Saints are my surefire pick. Steelers are my contingency pick there. As far as teams that won't make it back next year, the very popular meme that goes around is, how did this get here? And for me, that team is the Bills. I don't know how the Bills got here, honestly. I didn't expect the Bills to have a winning record this year, much less be the playoffs. The Titans at least won a playoff game. Mind you, it was a bit of a, give or take game since Kansas City was at home and they don't play well at home in the playoffs, but Mariota has a win. Unceremoniously was bounced by the Patriots, but the Bills, not so much. And I don't see a lot of players on the Bills' offense or defense that strikes me as, okay, this is a star player to build around. I just don't see it. So, especially if they move on from Tyrod Taylor, they'll be right back in a rebuilding year again. So, Bills are my team that will not make it next year. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So, of course, we still have 4 teams in the big race right now. And those 4 teams are the Eagles and Vikings, and the Patriots and the Jaguars. So, breaking down the 2 teams, like James said before, like you guys said a second ago, NFC is a defensive battle. It's going to be a close game. AFC is a battle of strengths. Patriots offense against the Jaguars defense. So who do you think is coming out of these 2 games and why? Who do you think is going to be in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I already pretty much said my NFC pick, so I'm just going to go that first. I got Vikings 17, Eagles 13. Like, I kind of already explained this, but like I said, I just think that these 2 defenses are going to hold each other to a lot of field goals, but I do think that the Vikings and Case Keenum, he's been starting this year longer than Nick Foles has. I think Case will find a way to get that one more touchdown more than his counterpart, and I think the Vikings will take this one by a total of 4 and move on to the Super Bowl, and the first team to be in the Super Bowl while being the host city. So it'll be interesting to see if that happens. And then on the AFC side, I'm predicting a pretty high-scoring game, actually. For this one, I'm going to say Jaguars 35, Patriots 31. And I just think the Jaguars defense, when it comes down to it, I feel like they'll make that one play to hold the Patriots to a field goal, and they'll get that 4-point advantage. And if they get that 4-point advantage, that defense is not going to let it go. So I think they'll be fighting tooth and nail up until then, and I think the Jaguars defense bunkers down and makes a play and holds the Patriots to a field goal, and that's all she wrote. So my Super Bowl would be Jaguars against the Vikings, and who the hell had that picked in Week 1? But I think that would be one of the best defensive battles in the Super Bowl we've seen in a very, very long time, and I for one, would love to see it, especially to see what percentage of the stadium is Vikings fans, since it's going to be in Minneapolis. That would be a great Super Bowl, in my opinion. Very entertaining to watch.
My Super Bowl picks to get there got to be the Eagles and the Jags. Eagles, like I said in the barn burner, 15-10. Jaguars, I think it'll be 21-10. Brady's only playmaker or game changer, it has to be Gronk, and the Jags have plenty of defenders that can not stop Gronk, but just frustrate him. He gets very, very frustrated throughout the game. He thrives on catching the ball and running after and breaking a tackle. Well, if you're making it so that he just catches the ball and getting down, or deflecting the ball or bullying him at the line, like, it's gonna make it a long day for him. So I just think if you frustrate Gronk, then Brady doesn't have his safety valve, and Brady's gonna falter towards the end. Because if you do remember against the Broncos, when he had all of his weapons healthy a few years ago, he got mauled by DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller all game. The Jags can bring far more pressure than that Broncos team could with 4 players, so we'll see how it goes. And then the Super Bowl, I got to go with the Jaguars, man. It's going to be the Jaguars year.
The NFC, Eagles-Vikings. Part of me wants the Vikings because the home field thing would be cool, but Nick Foles has won me a fantasy championship, so I got to stay loyal to him. So I'm going for the Eagles in that matchup. On the AFC, you already know it's the Patriots. I expect a great first half, like the Titans game, but you know Patriots are going to figure out what to do. We're going to call those trick plays. We're going to keep handing off to Dion Lewis. We're going to do tight end screens with Gronk. We're going to get a no-name involved. He's going to catch his first playoff touchdown this week. Look out for Hollister, our backup third-string tight end.
So, for me, on the NFC side, I'm really excited for it. I'll be honest. I think some magic from that Minneapolis Miracle is going to pour over, and I think the Minnesota Vikings are going to win a defensive game. It's going to be tough because the link is going to be rocking. The Eagles fans are going to be turning out in droves. I would be surprised to see a speck of purple in Philadelphia on Sunday. But the Vikings defense is scary, man. And the Eagles defense is top tier as well. But Vikings defense, out of all these teams, the Vikings and the Jaguars defenses legitimately scare me. Those are some big boys hitting each other. And for that reason, I think the Jaguars are going to beat the Patriots. The best way to beat Brady is to beat him with rushing 4. And the Jaguars, last I checked, blitz the fewest percentage of defensive snaps at 17.6%. They don't, and they still develop the moniker Saxonville for a reason. They blitz the fewest, and they still have the most sacks. I believe Zach was the one that shared all the big top defensive stats that the Jaguars are dominating in. 55 sacks, and they blitz the fewest of anybody. And that's how you beat Brady. Get him rattled, get him on the ground, and you can do it. Jalen Ramsey and Bowie on the outside are top tier. Their safeties are kind of, in my opinion, they're kind of middle of the road. But that's all you really need is a consistent secondary. And that's what they've had.
But, Eric, you're looking at the wrong matchup. Yeah, our 2 strengths. But look at their offense and our defense. 8 corners on the field. 8 DBs on the field. We're rushing 3. We're going to stop Bortles every time he throws.
You don't have to worry about Bortles throwing. You got to watch Fournette. And the problem with the Jacksonville...
Henry.
A 6'2", 240-pound running back drive through 8 cornerbacks.
Yeah.
We've defended that with Blunt before, so we're used to that.
No, they're not the same, man. No.
And the other problem that you have is Jacksonville's defense usually pins the offense back, which makes it so when they finally hand the ball over to their offense, their average starting field position is sometimes on the 30 or 40-yard line. It's so easy to hit one good 30-yard pass, and then you only got 30 yards to chunk down before you're in the end zone. It's going to be an excellent game, but ultimately, Jacksonville's offense is middle of the road. Patriots' defense is middle of the road. But it's the strengths that I'm looking at. If Jacksonville's defense beats Tom Brady, Jacksonville's going to the Super Bowl. And that's just how I see this going. I know I make the big joke about Bortles and all this stuff, but honestly, it's the Jacksonville defense that's going to the Super Bowl. Bortles is just along for the ride. So the final story for the NFL. While there are a lot of teams that have been bounced from the playoffs, 4 teams holding on to hope, and a handful of teams that are in the middle of rebuilding processes to see what happens next year, there are a lot of teams that have reached the end of the road and have cut loose their head coaches. Now, while some teams like the Raiders have found their head coach in John Gruden, there are a handful of other coaches who have not. Or a lot of teams, who have not. What team currently that does not have a head coach, whether they have someone linked to it, I think Matt Patricia has been linked to, the Giants, what have you, but they have not signed him yet, obviously. So what team right now that does not have a head coach do you believe is the most enticing or most attractive destination spot?
This is going to sound really strange for a little bit, but I'm going to explain myself. I'm going to say the Colts. And the reason is there are 2 ways the tree could fall in Indianapolis. The first way is that Andrew Luck figures out what the hell is going on with him and comes back, and he's just the same Andrew Luck that he comes in at. So, yeah, either that happens and they have a top-tier quarterback again, and if they retain T.Y. Hilton, which is going to be a tall feat, it really depends on how good the head coach is that they hire. If Hilton stays with the Colts, their offense is fine with those 2 guys. They need to get a halfback, obviously, because the one they have is really old. But yeah, and the defense is a freaking mess, and that's why I said it was going to sound weird. But yeah, I mean, go to free agency, get some guys to replace the veterans, get some younger guys, maybe start developing a defense. And the other way the tree could fall is that Andrew Luck doesn't come back, or whatever's bothering him just doesn't seem to be getting any better, and Hilton walks, and then you have a clean slate. And you'll have some leeway with that. If you're a newly hired head coach, you can mold your own team with the Colts, if that makes any sense. So, depending on who you are, that could be very, very appealing to you. If you like the idea of coming into a clean slate, having full control of getting the draft picks in, getting the free agency going, meeting with players, getting some confidence up in the locker room, being kind of a player's coach or a veteran head coach that's looking for a job, I think is the kind of person this would appeal to. But so either you have an Andrew Luck-led team again, which is good, or you have an absolute clean slate, and a guy can come in, draft his guys, get his free agents in, and see what they can do with the Colts. So it's either a complete rebuild, or it's Andrew Luck-led team. So that's my opinion, and you guys probably disagree with me, but I think the Colts is a pretty appealing job. But once again, it really depends on what kind of head coach you are.
I think the Colts would be appealing if I could name 2 of their defensive starters, but I can't.
Is Dwight Freeney still there?
No.
Oh wait, no, he's on. That's right, he's on Atlanta. I'm dumb. Ignore me.
Clean slate, man. That's what I was talking about. Draft some defenders. Get your guys in there.
I think the most enticing head coaching job would have to be Tennessee. I mean, you have Marcus Mariota, who's probably not at the same point as Andrew Luck in his career, but he has a far higher ceiling. And then that defense is just it's up and coming, man. They got an all-pro safety in Kevin Byard. I mean, they got great linebackers. Like I can't wait to see that team grow. I would definitely want to be a head coach of the Tennessee Titans. They have a very favorable situation. They have the franchise quarterback. They have the stout defense. Like they can go somewhere in that division. That division is up for grabs. I mean, the Jaguars are going to the Super Bowl this year, but who knows if they keep Blake Bortles? Who knows if that becomes a rotating position for them? Who knows? I mean, the AFC South can be up for grabs next year. And I think the Tennessee Titans with the right head coach like Josh McDaniels could take it over.
My pick for the best head coaching job out there has to be the Detroit Lions. You have Stafford. Yeah, they had that off year, but it's because their defense is not that good. So if you get a great defensive-minded coach, and I think they will in Matt Patricia, he's good at making adjustments. He's been under Belichick. I think he'll right that defense, get Stafford some more help besides just Golden Tate. Maybe get him a better running back. And who knows? Can Matt Patricia talk Calvin Johnson out of retirement? Yeah, he can't feel his hand, but you kind of want to try. So yeah, that's a great start for a career, is starting at Detroit Lions compared to other jobs.
I think for me, the most enticing coaching job would have to be a team I'm pretty familiar with, and that's the Giants. Most of their issues this year, I felt like, came from lack of injuries, because of injuries. Offensively, they were inept because offensively they lost every single weapon. Their starting running back, their 3 starting wide receivers, their tight end that was supposed to be this godsend at tight end never developed, and Eli Manning is getting a bit older. But all those are issues that can realistically be fixed. Eli Manning, it's obviously, give or take whether or not he still has a year or 2 left in him, if he's even going to be with the Giants next year. But Odell Beckham, the big thing for the Giants is the quarterback position, and what do you do with Odell Beckham? Do you let him walk, or do you sign him long term? I feel like if you let him walk, the Giants' job becomes a little bit uninspiring and unenticing. But if you can get somebody in there that can convince Odell Beckham Jr. to stay with New York, oh, they're golden. And that is a beautiful opportunity. That defense is still good. It was a little bit injured last year. You build some depth. That defense can carry you, even if the offense is a little bit slower. I think the Giants' position is probably... I think a lot of the issues of the Giants is McAdoo lost the locker room. And if you're playing uninspired football, you're not going to win many games. And that was ultimately what did end the Giants last year. You put a coach in there that inspires that team, that gets that team wanting to play, and the NFC East will be the beast in the NFC once again. So, before we move on to the other sports, any closing remarks for the NFL?
Make defenses great again.
Alrighty, so we are going to bid the NFL farewell as the championship games go ahead, and we are going to move on to the NBA. We got a couple of stories here. One story involving a juggernaut that seems to have chinks in the armor, and the other story is about a team that might soon ascend the ranks here before too long, and it might be time we start taking them more seriously. So we're going to start off with the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like we talk about them every single podcast, but there is a news story in Cleveland, and this one might not be so rosy. So LeBron James came outright and stated that to him, this has been his hardest season. Now, LeBron says this pretty much every single season. But this season seems to be, honestly, his hardest season. And I was talking to Greg, who's my boss. I've mentioned him in podcasts in the past. He is a LeBron James super fan, just like Zach is. And so he supports the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he's actually worried. And he's growing more and more worried every single week about Cleveland this year. And he brought up something that I never really thought about. And I wonder if you guys have. So, when LeBron was young, he had the ability to carry 100% from the first to the overtime if needed. He doesn't have that ability quite anymore. Because, as Zach has said in the past, Father Time is going to hit everybody. Now, I'm not saying LeBron James is toward the cliff or the end of his career, but LeBron James is in his 15th season. And so, if you look back at every single year over the past 4 or 5 seasons, LeBron James has always had that one other guy who can either be the igniter or be the closer. Because that's the problem with this season right now. LeBron James is trying to be both. And LeBron James just isn't able to be explosive from the first quarter through the fourth quarter. He doesn't have that person that can be the igniter, which will allow him to coast, to where he can use up all his energy in the fourth, or vice versa. Now, Isaiah Thomas might be able to be that person. But the problem with not putting Isaiah Thomas in it is he's a defensive liability, which is the bigger issue Cleveland's facing right now. With everything starting to stack up, is this a sign that we could have a different team representing the East in the finals this year?
See, well, first of all, I don't want to say that we'll have a new team representing the East in the finals this year because, one, it's not the playoffs right now, and two, every team goes through these bad stints. I do want to say real quick that Isaiah Thomas needs to get his ass in gear. Right now, it's really looking like Boston's gotten the better side of that trade. And, you know, Isaiah was supposed to come in and be this guy, this right-hand man for LeBron, and he's just been flailing recently. And, I mean, honestly, you got two defensive kind of liabilities with Kevin Love as well as Isaiah Thomas on the floor. But yeah, Isaiah Thomas needs to get his game right, and I think he's even said in post-game interviews during this losing streak that he needs to get his head in the game because.
Side note, real quick before you go on, they did snap that losing streak tonight against the Magic by beating them by 1 point. But 1 point win is a win.
A win's a win, but you know, baby steps there. And like I said, honestly, I think Isaiah Thomas has said in interviews recently, post-game stuff recently, that he needs to get his head back in the game. He needs to get back to playing his game. Because he had that injury and he hasn't played in a while, and he was on limited time when he came back in this year, and I don't think he's up to where he needs to be for this team right now. But who's to say he's not going to get there ever this season? I think he'll get there. I think we'll get back up to it. I don't know. I feel like it's just a lot of frustration coming because, like, at the beginning of this year, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't LeBron saying he's feeling better than he ever has in his career, and now suddenly he's saying that this is his hardest season? I honestly think this is a result of a lot of frustration from this losing streak. Winning tonight, you know, even if it's by 1 point, I think it's huge for this team. They need to get a W on the screen. You know, they've been suffering way too many losses recently. So getting a W on that screen is really, really nice for LeBron and stuff, just for some confidence. But I think the Cavs are fine. I mean, they're just going through a really, really bad cold streak right now. But I did want to say that Isaiah Thomas needs to get his ass in gear if this team's going to make another appearance in the finals. Other than that, I think they're absolutely fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything to really worry about. I think in the short term and the long term, the Cavs got the worst end of the deal unless that Brooklyn pick turns into a top 3 pick. They definitely got the worst end of that deal because, I mean, Brad Stevens is obviously a better coach than Tyronn Lue. He's got Kyrie Irving bought into playing defense, which is something a coach who's a few years older than LeBron could not get Kyrie to do. Something that David Blatt, a very well accomplished coach, so be it in the European League, but very well accomplished, could not get Kyrie Irving to do. And Brad Stevens got him bought into it because Kyrie Irving's seeing the benefit of that. The main thing that hinders LeBron is that his best second fiddle since he came to Cleveland has probably been Kevin Love, man. Like, overall, Kevin Love's not going to quit on you. Kyrie Irving quit on the defensive side. Isaiah Thomas couldn't play defense if he was on stilts. Like, he's just too short. He's not quick enough to play defense. He doesn't pick the pocket of the opponent's guards to do it. There's a lot of small issues with what the Cavs do. LeBron will bring that together, but as far as them getting the cohesion over the season, I am a little worried in that aspect because LeBron is older. He's played 15 years in the league. He's at the same age as Michael Jordan was when he won his, I think, 3rd championship. But I mean, he's never been bounced in the first round of the playoffs like Michael Jordan was multiple times. he's played the equivalent, I think, of like 2 or 3 seasons in the postseason. And that doesn't sound like that much, but you have to think that that time spent makes his season longer, makes his offseason shorter. He's playing into the middle of June when other players are done in like April, end of April. Like they get an extra month, 2 months on him. He doesn't get that. He goes straight in the offseason, and then he just goes through rigorous months of training, and then he comes right back to it. He doesn't give his body a break, so his body's feeling a lot of wear and tear right now that he's probably realizing, and he's always overestimated his ability to bring his team together and kind of lift his team up, like Eric said. His coworker told him. I mean, that's LeBron's best thing. He's probably the best person in NBA history at bringing his teammates up to a higher level. He elevates his teammates' play because he instills confidence in them. I got a feeling that this might be LeBron's last year in Cleveland because there might be a situation like his last year in the Heat where he goes to the playoffs and they win and they win and they go to the finals, and he's going to pass to these guys that Cleveland got him when the GM that they had left, and then the only GM they had to go through with these moves to get a player like Isaiah Thomas in that Brooklyn pick was the owner, Dan Gilbert. And he's going to pass him like, look what you got me, Dan Gilbert. Look what you got me. And just watch them brick and brick and brick. And then they'll probably lose in 5 or 6 games, and then LeBron will leave because LeBron's at a point in his career where he's at the pinnacle of his – he's at the exact point where his basketball IQ and his athletic dominance combined are at their peak, and he's not going to waste that on somebody like Dan Gilbert who doesn't give a shit about his star player. The best thing that has ever happened to the city of Cleveland, he doesn't care about it. So we'll see how the season goes. I think from this point to about beginning of April will define whether LeBron's going to stay.
You know, for me, I think it's going to require a trade of some kind in order to balance out the defensive inefficiencies that the Cavaliers have. And I don't know if they have the resources in order to make a big enough trade to stop this. Because the problem that you're having is, you look at all the teams that are winning right now. Yes, defensive-minded is dominating in Boston. But Toronto is capable of putting up 120 points any night. Milwaukee is able to do explosive things on the offensive end. The Heat are all of a sudden offensively good. And then on the other side, you have Golden State and Houston and the Timberwolves, which we're going to get to in a moment, that are all exploding on offense. And that is the area that LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers aren't able to stop. They're going to need something defensive, and I don't think they have the resources. That Brooklyn pick might have to be used in order to get LeBron James the help he needs. And I just... You know, the problem with that Brooklyn pick is the more Brooklyn wins, the less attractive that pick is looking. So, I don't know. This could be a very interesting Eastern Finals and not the landslide that everyone thought it was going to be. So, talking about landslide, walk to the round 4 of Cavaliers and Golden State. Another cog that might be another wrench that might be thrown in the cog that is the NBA is the Timberwolves. The Timberwolves had arguably the best month of December in the NBA this season. Absolutely explosive right now. The bench is dominating, which has been the Timberwolves' Achilles tendon the last few seasons. Cat is progressing astronomically. Jimmy Butler is doing exactly what he was brought here for. Jeff Teague is healthy again and doing exactly what he was brought here for. Are they a legitimate threat to Golden State and Houston? And keep your bias to yourself, Tom.
I'm not you. Honestly, the Timberwolves look... Obviously, this is a completely different team than last year. I mean, we're almost at 30 wins already. And a couple years ago, we hit, 20 wins for the entire year. So, I mean, this team has definitely come a long way. It's a different team. We got a lot of free agents, got a lot of support for Wiggins and Towns, who I think we're definitely confident in building a team around at this point. Jimmy Butler has been probably the best free agent pickup for the entire NBA, in my opinion. Jimmy Butler just changes this team. My only hope is that they don't get burned out. Thibodeau has a long history of burning out his starters, and I just don't want that to happen because we're going to need Butler to be 100% for the playoff run. He just seems to be the glue that holds these younger players together, and our bench has been fantastic. That was the main goal this offseason, was to get free agents to come off the bench, and we got some of the best coming off the bench, and it's been great. But honestly, I don't think that we're a legitimate threat to the Warriors. We're in a better spot than we were, but I think we're pretty locked into the 4th seed. So I think we're the 4th best team in the league. The Spurs have been having their own troubles with Leonard keeps getting hurt, and he's never really 100% recently. If he comes back, I think the Spurs will hop us again. I do think we're the 4th best team in the West, behind the Warriors, the Rockets, and the Spurs. How we'll do in the playoffs, I mean, time will tell. A lot of these players don't have any experience in the playoffs. It'll be interesting. But in the playoff atmosphere, everything changes, as many of us know and as many of us have seen before. Everyone was doubting LeBron James's team, and then he did. He always somehow makes it to the finals. So things change in the playoffs, and you can't really judge how a team's going to perform in the playoffs. But I can tell you right now, in a best of 7, we'll probably take 2 games off of the Warriors, maybe 3 off the Rockets, maybe 2 or 3 off the Rockets, and I think a series with the Spurs is almost guaranteed to go to 7 with the Wolves. But I mean, I think that's where we're at right now. This team needs to get more experienced. Wiggins and Towns need to get that playoff experience. Maybe in 2 years, if we keep this roster around, or one or 2 seasons, maybe. If we keep this roster around, keep Jimmy Butler around, this team can maybe threaten the Rockets or the Warriors. But yeah, at this point, we're not at that level yet. And I wish I could say with confidence that we're I'm going to be completely realistic here, and I'm just going to say we're not close to the Warriors level. We're probably close to the Rockets and Spurs level. And I think we belong in that top 4 conversation, obviously. But the Warriors are just on another level, man. I just don't see us beating them in the best of 7.
I think the Timberwolves could push the Warriors and the Rockets to 6 games. But what the Warriors and the Rockets excel at that the Timberwolves need to work on is offensive fluidity and defensive stoutness. They need to get better on defense. I mean, that much has been made clear by how many videos are of Karl Anthony Towns on the internet where he just gets blown by and just kind of looks around his teammates like, why don't you help me, blah, blah. I mean, defense is something you could teach. Jimmy Butler is an animal at defense. Dude just gets it. Tom Thibodeau is a huge proponent of playing defense first, letting your offense come out of that. Taj Gibson is one of his teachers that he can lean on to teach the way of defense to these guys. And then on offense, man, you have to be able to flow the ball through. You can't have people that stop the ball at them and then just kind of do ISO basketball. The NBA is moving to a more fluid offense because it just so happens that the ball moves faster than any player. So as long as you're moving the ball, you give yourself more opportunity to score. I think the Timberwolves are on their way there. I think they are top 5, top 6 in the West. But when the Warriors and the Rockets are operating at peak efficiency, they're very, very difficult to beat.
I think the Timberwolves will definitely give Houston and Golden State a challenge in the playoffs and down the stretch. But I think a crucial thing they should do is get one more piece in their puzzle. The deadline's coming up, trade deadline for NBA, February 8th. Maybe add one more piece to the puzzle, one more weapon to use, and that team will look stout against them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the Timberwolves have a roster that can compete with Houston and Golden State, but I feel like, Andrew Wiggins is still too much of a question mark. I'm not sure if Wiggins is as good as a lot of Timberwolves fans have claimed him to be. It's another conversation me and Greg have actually had before. Is Wiggins overrated? Greg thinks 110% absolutely. He thinks that Wiggins would be best served as a sixth man, not a starter. Karl Anthony Towns, I think, needs to mature a little bit on the defensive end. Like Zach has said, he looks like he gets bodied too much. But I feel like if those two can develop a little bit further, behind Jimmy Butler's leadership, that's a team that can definitely compete. We said before that the only thing that can stop Golden State, and probably Houston for that matter, is injuries. And both of them have had a little bit of injury issues this season, which is something we haven't had before. Do those injuries linger? The injuries to Klay Thompson, stuff like that, do those things linger? That could be an opening. But at this point in time, I don't think the Timberwolves are quite there yet. And again, playoffs, like we've said in the NBA, playoffs, everything changes. Golden State looks acceptable last year, and then they almost went 12-0. So it'll be interesting. I think you guys are the third best team. I think y'all are better than the Spurs. That's a completely honest opinion. But that's probably where you guys are going to stay. So, do you guys have any final notes to make on the NBA before we move on to our last topic of discussion?
If the Cavs keep the Brooklyn pick, LeBron's gone.
That's probably a really astute assessment there. Tom and James, y'all got anything?
For the NBA, not really. I don't really follow the NBA until the NFL season is over. Hardcore follow.
True.
I'll have something next time we discuss it.
But you know what? That's actually a perfect segue, because there's another sport that no one pays attention to until the football version is over, and that is college basketball. College basketball is a circus right now. Nobody knows what's going on. It is probably, how did I see it put on Twitter the other day? It is extremely middle heavy. There aren't really any elite teams in this year's college basketball. There's a lot of A's, but there's no A pluses like we've had in years past. Duke is acceptable on defense. UNC doesn't have a complete team. They're not playing team basketball. Kentucky, I'm not exactly sure what's going on with Kentucky. Michigan State, they were expecting them to run away with the number 1 seed, and then they lost twice. So, right now, the top 3 consists of Villanova, not a surprise, Virginia, which wasn't even ranked to start the season, and Purdue. Purdue is ranked 3rd, and last time I checked, they blew out Wisconsin the other night. Blew them out. What in the world? Is there an explanation for what's going on in college basketball? Are the freshmen not coming out? Because, again, like Tom said, I haven't really been following basketball outside of UVA very much, except for blaspheming at my phone going, what? The top ranked lost again? Zach, I know you follow basketball a lot more, so I'm going to go ahead and let you start this. Do you have any explanation as to what's going on in college basketball?
We have finally reached the point where we don't have enough seniors and we have too many freshman and sophomore talent. That's what this is. What keeps teams like Wichita State a few years ago when they were undefeated for most of the season, and teams like Villanova, great throughout the season, is consistency throughout the years, maintaining the team. And now you finally have a lot of young teams that are very, very good, very qualified for their rankings. But when you have a young team, there's some things they haven't seen before. Some plays they haven't seen before, some schemes, some defense, and they get exposed. They get exposed very quickly, very early. And teams can find out these weaknesses early on in the season when these players are still learning how to play the game of basketball at a collegiate level. I mean, it's honestly fun for me. I mean, it's not fun as a Duke fan to watch our team lose, but I'd rather us lose at the beginning of the season than the last game of the season. Nobody wants to lose the last game of the season. Only one team gets to finish their season on a win. and call themselves a champion. So it's a lot of work, man, to get to be a successful basketball team, and these freshmen haven't put in that kind of work, and they're getting exposed because of it. I mean, it's exciting. It's going to be a wide open field. There's no telling who will be the 1, 2, 3, 4 seeds in the tournament. No telling. I mean, this is probably the earliest I've seen. I've never seen a season by middle of January just be completely wide open. I mean, there's a time at the beginning of the season when Duke was the all-out favorite. There's a time after that where it was Arizona State, then Michigan State took over, and then Villanova took over, and all those teams are losing. All 4 of those teams could be crowned champion in the season, and all 4 of those teams could be knocked out in the first few rounds. You never know. I think the quality of basketball from the middle to lower teams, like you said, middle heavy, is getting a lot better. Like, those teams are keeping their players and they're developing them how they should be. That's how it should be done. And they're showing it by beating these teams. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I would not want to be playing in the Big 12 conference because it seems like nobody can win in that conference and everybody's fair game.
I just want to make a couple quick notes. First of all, I just feel like every single time my phone buzzes and it's an ESPN notification, it says, close game alert, top ranked, whoever the hell it is this week, down 6 points late into the second half. I just feel like I keep getting those notifications. It's such a weird year. I think this is going to be one of the hardest NCAA tournaments to pick when it comes around March time. But the other thing is, Eric was talking about where the heck did Purdue come from and who is this team. Well, I just read something. Apparently, after the Wisconsin win, Purdue now has the best is now the best team according to BPI and the favorite to win the NCAA tournament at just over 20% chance to win it all. So, according to BPI, at least, they're the best team in the NCAA. So, very interesting. Villanova's right behind them, followed by UVA, and I believe Oklahoma after that, and Michigan State. Or not Oklahoma, Duke, and then Michigan State. I think Oklahoma's the one after that. Yeah. So it's super interesting. Like, where did Purdue come from? We're gonna have to start keeping an eye on this team.
Yeah, big time. I mean, I'm really excited for this season, obviously. But I agree with you a lot, Zach. It seems like team basketball is dominating freshman-run teams. You look at Kansas, Kentucky, Duke, teams that are laden with freshmen. They're kind of on the up and coming, but they're not the favorites like they were every year. You look at UVA, Villanova, Purdue. I watched that Purdue-Wisconsin game, and Purdue just made them look silly. I mean, Wisconsin's not that great, but Purdue just embarrassed them at times. I mean, it was like they couldn't move. Purdue was suffocating them on the defensive end. And again, I had never seen Purdue play until that night, and it was just like, okay, all right, you know what? I think this is the best team in the NCAA. As a UVA fan, I'm embarrassed to say I haven't even seen us play yet. I don't know how we look. I have yet to see Villanova play because I've been watching Michigan State and Duke and UNC and Kansas and Kentucky thinking, okay, these are the teams that are going to win it again, and they lose. Every game I've seen of one of those top teams, they lost. I watched the Duke game last time they lost. I watched Michigan State last time they lost. I should probably just stop watching the big teams. But, it's just, it's going to be a really exciting season. I have no idea who even going to be the number 1 seeds right now. And forget picking the tourneys, because it's like you said, Zach, the Big 12, who do you think is coming out of that conference as the conference champion? Who's coming out of the ACC, which is all of a sudden laden with teams that have never been ranked before? Clemson's ranked all of a sudden. Miami was ranked a little while ago. I think Florida State was ranked last time I checked. Obviously, Duke and UVA. I think UNC was still ranked, but they were low. But it's just a cacophony of clown circus going on in the NCAA right now.
Oh, this is the one year I do not want to put money in the March Madness bracket tournament. How are you pick the games? Flip a coin? There's no good educational guesses. Maybe Duke, maybe Kansas, maybe Kentucky. but they're all could be on upset potential. I feel bad for 16 seeds every year, but maybe this year they can actually do something. That would be wonderful. I would love to see that. But I would hate to see the tournament play out like it should. I want tons of upsets. And this year is going to lead to tons of upsets.
I agree. But that is all I had, unless anyone else had any last-minute notes on that or anything else college basketball related. Alrighty, so that does it for us. That is the end for this 60 for 60 podcast. We'll be coming back to you guys the day or two before the Super Bowl to talk about, break down the Super Bowl teams, how they got there, looking towards the future, and obviously I'm sure the college basketball circuit will be topsy-turvy for us. Absolutely. I do want to get into some NHL at some point. I'm going to get with a few friends who are NHL heads and throw some NHL in here to make up for the fact that we're not going to have football. And keep in mind, this is going to be the last of a 2-a-month podcast. Starting next month, we're going to be doing the podcast once a month. And we've got a gaming podcast that is going to take the place of the second sports podcast next month. So I'm super excited about that. So any closing remarks from you guys?
Tom?
I got nothing.
James?
Patriots about to get that W.
Shut your ass up.
I just want to say that if it wasn't for Marvin Bagley, we'd be talking about Wendell Carter as the best freshman big man in the country. But damn, is Bagley good. Man, I might hate life when Coach K retires. Like, honestly. It's going to suck.
He's going to go through withdrawal syndromes.
Oh, dude. I might just stop watching Duke altogether, man. It's going to be so hard. Coach K is so freaking good. And he's so pure. Fuck, man.
At least you have your Coach K shrine.
Yeah, man. I got to start building that.
I got one for you, Zach. So Saturday, January 27th, is a huge day in college basketball.
But
all
UVA
these
versus
teams
Duke.
are on TV. And at 2 p.m. on CBS, UVA at Duke.
Told you.
That is going to be one hell of a game.
I thought y'all had a chance, and then you said at Duke. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I feel the same way, honestly. But hey, 2 versus 5, we ain't going to fall out of the top 5 if we're both still there.
Hey, good luck.
Well, that does it for us today. We will see you guys in 2 weeks to talk about the Super Bowl. Peace.
Peace.